What's the movie going to start off with? Like me sitting here and this?
Yeah. You want to be watching it already, or you want to start it after you've gotten the apple?
I think I'd grab the apple and then start it.
Okay, let's try it.
The lens of a motion picture projector is an eye. It can help you stimulate, motivate, educate in such a way to change attitudes.
Okay, Steven, got the blue screen set up.
To communicate information. With the camera documenting actual events so that they become
Visual experiences.
the use of unusual camera techniques, sometimes even poetical narration, contribute to the film's purpose.
So a bunch of us students got together with some folks from Frog Hollow Neighborhood House to do a community film project. Us high schoolers set out to take a look into documentary filmmaking, while the documentary set out to take a look into high schools. We shot in schools and the community and gathered public domain footage, educational community film projects from the past.
At the heart of our struggle to maintain and strengthen a democratic way of life are the nation's schools.
Public education, the way we know it, is less than a century old. That the idea that we would have particular buildings dedicated, that we would have a formal curriculum with a whole series of tests and exams, what we've been doing is progressively institutionalizing that idea. Not always recognizing that sometimes in the institutionalization of that, we do damage to our notions of education.
These lines of desks.
You walk in, they yell at you.
Some sort of prison class, like something out of Metropolis.
So quiet, and there's these teachers like walking up and down. Students filing, it's just kind of like mechanical.
You have a certain type of pencil, you have to fill it in a certain type of way.
Just like they're filling out these circles, and you like look around.
Education is something that can't be quantifiable through use of a letter grade, things like that.
A lot of teachers are forced to teach towards the provincial. It constricts what they can do with the curriculum.
It's so intense for that one little hour, and this is what a lot of your mark depends on, right?
If your grades fall below expectations, do you say, what's the use?
I think if we look back over our history in a longer time frame than the last 10 years, we'll see that in education there's often a pendulum swing. So there was a time when there were exit exams at the end of high school or end of grade 8 across the country. And gradually, particularly in the 1960s and 70s, and what we were learning from psychology about how students learn, they kind of went out the window, and we were left with systems that weren't consistently measuring how well students were doing. Now we've reimposed and created many new models. Now we are preoccupied with that, as if doing well on those tests is the purpose of education. Often the public and the media are supporting this kind of pressure around measurement.
It's more intense than it ever has been, and it's becoming more intense because post-secondary institutions are becoming that much more competitive, and they're setting the bar that much higher. And it all compresses itself into a time constraint where that curriculum or those curricula have to be delivered in a way in which it's kind of, examinable, and the students can manage the exam within a 10-month period. So a lot of that, just sheer getting ready for the test, pressure is quite displacing of real opportunities for learning, for broad learning. That's a problem.
A think tank founded to report on public institutions and private free market alternatives, the Fraser Institute ranks BC schools based on these exam scores. It's intended for the use of parents to help them choose and to help them evaluate their school compared to others. It provides easy access that everybody can look at to objective information with regard to how schools are doing. Now, we produce these both for elementary schools and for high schools in British Columbia, in Ontario and in Alberta. In Quebec, just a secondary report card. New Brunswick, same thing. In Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and a couple of the maritime provinces, there are not well-established systems of testing across the province, and as a result, they're data poor. And that's a pity, because the testing that provides the basis for most of our report cards, I think, is a necessary part of an education system. What we want to do with the report cards is to measure output, results.
There has always been this rich variety of individual demands. But nowadays, almost every adult agrees on one basic goal for all students.
Schools ought to turn out good citizens.
Yes, good citizens.
That's right. Absolutely. This country always needs good citizens.
The key point is citizen.
That's John Ralston Saul, otherwise known as His Excellency. At the time, anyway, when his wife, Adrienne Clarkson, was the Governor General of Canada. They came to our school to talk with us students.
The introduction to the British Columbia 1872 School Act. It said the purpose of public education is to give every child in the province such knowledge as will fit him, her, they didn't quite know about that, to become a useful, you think utilitarian, but no, a useful and intelligent citizen. The noun is citizen.
Our next questioner is Janice Wong.
My question is, the Fraser Institute releases an annual report. Every year, private schools have dominated the top 10 positions. Some have taken the report seriously, but at the other end of the spectrum, people have just ignored its importance. In reality, can we have a general agreed standard on students' performance at school?
No. I don't wish to be unpleasant about any organization. It would never be. But let's just say that they are the perfect illustration of the ultimate utilitarian approach.
Fraser Institute is an embodiment of something that pervades the Western world, that you want to be able to have a consumer rating. Simple answers to complex questions can be very seductive. Graduation rates, exam results are proxy answers to the question about what is a good and worthwhile life and how do we go about getting to that.
Higher standards of living, limitless bounty for the taking.
You know, it's a funny thing about education. A lot of people view it saying, oh, well, you can't talk about education as a service, you know, like grocery stores. If you have a provider, the local public government-run neighborhood school, that is not meeting the needs and aspirations and requirements of its constituency, then it deserves to do one of two things: change or close.
What counts as education? We disagree fundamentally about that, and we always will. So how do we go about deciding those kind of things leads us to notions of democracy. And democracy is a word that is at least as confusing as education.
If the experience in school is not one of active participation, of contributing to the decisions that are made, we're not even demonstrating what it might be like to live in a world that functions democratically. So I think that notion of citizenship should guide the way we think about curriculum.
Teaching students subject matter in democratic situations that develop better citizens is being done more and more in alert school systems, where parents and teachers are concerned about how and what their children learn to prepare them for citizenship. Let's ask some questions.
Oh, Mr. McGeer. Oh. Mr. Tim McGeer, my teacher and a mentor. I'm sorry, what was the line?
You know, just tell me about Mr. McGeer in your own words. Forget the lines.
Mr. McGeer, he had a creative approach to everything.
You want to take a break?
Yeah, do you mind if I take this off now? It's getting kind of hot.
Yeah, you can just put it.
Anyone want some pizza?
Excuse me. We've heard fine reports about this school and about the good things that you and your students have been doing. Can you tell us something about how and why you came to use your present method of teaching?
Well, that's a pretty big order. I might tell you how I first became interested in trying it out.
I didn't really like school. I'm not saying I hated all of school when I was a kid, but there were a lot of areas of school that I found boring. So for me, one of the things I wanted to change was to make learning seem more organic rather than something you're supposed to do just to jump through the hoops in order to get a certain marks in order to get to university. What kind of values do we want to encourage in our young people? Curiosity of mind, critical thought. And these values and attributes are learned not in academic courses necessarily. They're learned in relationship between teachers and students, explorations to make their learning real.
But what interests us is, how do you develop these qualities through a regular school program?
Well, suppose we take last year's class.
In there that serves meals for I think about $2 or $1.50. Beautiful hot meals. They have.
Really what we're trying to do with this project is get these students, or at least invite them to take a look at their environment with new eyes.
A for apple, no, not achievement. B is beyond what we are perceiving. C in control is not meant for teaching. Stand for your rights and what you believe in.
You have no right, man. They're good people. You just gotta get to know them.
That's me. I played Gordon Trump, always scheming to save a buck.
They received recognition for that, and they saw results.
The results made us proud. The government committed to seismic upgrading of all Vancouver schools.
Steve Eastman from Gladstone.
An apple, a fruit that over the years in our culture has become a symbol for knowledge. But what happens if these cuts continue? This is what we're left with. This is what we're all entitled to. Which one do you want to feed your children?
And Stephen is a guy who understands what it is to take hold of his own learning. All he, as a student, needs is a little guidance and opportunities.
Thanks, Mr. McGeer. Gladstone was a great school to go to, but you wouldn't know it from the Fraser report.
Each year and the following day after the Fraser Institute report would be published, generally people would be fairly deflated. The fact that those results are made public is the reason why they resonate. We didn't like the perception of the school, the public perception of the school. We wanted to change that.
Through considerable reading, committee work, discussion, experimenting, we tried to find the answer.
During the Governor General's visit, we talked about our struggle to improve our school's reputation.
Everything, if something happens on the east side, it's immediately out there because the east side's so bad. That's what we've been trying to do, is work towards getting the good things out there.
You should really ask to get a delegation of students together and ask to be received by the editorial board of the Vancouver Sun. That's the way you get your story out, is to build a relationship. I mean, if you're interested, I'm seeing the editor-in-chief tonight.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Patricia Graham. I am the editor-in-chief of the Vancouver Sun newspaper, and it's my great pleasure to be your MC.
And, you know, this morning, Governor General and I were at Gladstone Secondary. They were worrying about their public image, and I said that I thought what they should do was call up you up.
Education needs communication. Proclamation, no hesitation. I'm a boy. More than A's and B's. Wanna fight for my community. Cause I find it important to me.
I thought it went okay, I guess.
Better than expected.
less hostile than expected. Not only did we present a problem, but we presented a proposal, and she was really happy with that.
Could we then, with our committee, intervene into the public space, into the media, and publicize what our school was doing in order to really give counterpart narratives about quality and value in education?
CPW,
I got like 6 or like 7 points to go through.
We have the power to decide which articles we like.
We have till 12:15.
I haven't really seen anything that's worthy of being like the major headline yet, but that'll probably turn up.
See what their decisions are going to be today after knowing all the stories they've had to choose from, and think about that when I want to get something in the paper.
Students researched and wrote a 3-part series asking, what is an educated person? What are misconceptions about teenagers and schools? What does assessment really mean in the school?
Where is uniqueness? Where is the diversity?
The teachers should adapt to the students and not the other way around.
Decide where they want the marks to be distributed in a course so that then they'll get marked for something that interests them.
Just get rid of the standardized testing. It's not working.
We have to come up with a different way of testing so that they know who's actually good.
If you're not comfortable with your teachers or the way your classrooms run, you're not going to learn as well as you could be.
Teach to their personal strengths and help them develop their weaknesses.
I would really like teachers that can adapt to your learning style.
Let the students evaluate you too.
And if we're just told to do something that you told us to do the way you want it and we don't like it, we're not going to do any better.
It's about time like more of us get involved in stuff like this.
As long as we can reach common ground and degree, then at least we're improving somewhere.
We as students are all individuals.
Each one of us is unique. We're not generic.
To move beyond generic education, you have to get to know us all individually. So this is where our mentors sent us out to do some real documentary work. Get some in-the-field footage of this mythical species, Haesculios studentius. Most of my fellow youth volunteers go to another Eastside school, Vancouver Technical. So that's where they followed around some grade 12 students.
Forecast mostly sunny skies today with brisk easterly winds.
No, I don't just sit around and watch TV all day or eat chocolate. You know, I'm active. You know, I do stuff.
I'm so proud of my daughter.
That's right. Oh, puppy.
Then you have to just fling yourself. And I totally can't do it. Sure.
You got scholarships? So cute. Yeah. Granny was telling me at the time, he's like, don't spend it all in one place. And I was like, I'm spending it all in Australia. He's like, oh, ho, ho, ho.
At the October grade 12, grade 8 dance, I was off for drugs. Hopefully in grade 12, I won't be an addict.
I didn't feel like I was learning at school. I felt like I was being held back. And I felt that a lot of time was wasted. I felt like I was just being sent to babysitting or something.
When I was young, a group of 4 guys and me, we started Imitation Boy Band.
Now it can move forward with a nice GED, good enough diploma.
I'm actually enjoying it. I'm enjoying chemistry and biology that I didn't enjoy before. You know, it's coming from a different place after having some time off to actually see how everything interconnects. I think that's a huge part of what school's missing is explaining. I mean, you have different subjects and you go into a different classroom with a different teacher, and it's all explained as something separate, but really it's all connected. I mean, biology is as much a part of art as, you know, math is a part of music.
Education, communication, make it dialogic, two-way. Yeah, we don't play. Yeah, yeah, What? Yeah, yeah. What? Yo. A is for apple, no, not achievement. B is beyond what we are perceiving. C in control is not meant for teaching. Stand for your rights and what you believe in. Community we're living in, we are not dividends. Grading is a way to divide and tie citizens, trained to consume and fit into a neverland. I'm tired of the mass-produced rules and programs. Old plans need to adapt, not discriminate. Know the whole, not the half of the math. Thematic, static, and systematic. A holistic approach is needed to be an additive. A is for apple, no, not achievement. B is beyond what we are perceiving. C in control is not meant for teaching. Stand for your rights and what you believe in.
The majority of students that graduate from here have a very good foundation to be successful in whatever they choose to do. But yet if you looked at the school in the rankings, it doesn't show that. You know, it doesn't show the kinds of caring things that go on in the school every day, the kinds of activities and the volunteerism that happens. You know, it's tough. It's a tough thing to try and get out there because you can't put a number on it and show vandalism rates or improvements in scholarships or volunteer numbers go up or down. But it's really hard to put numbers on something. Everybody wants numbers on something that you can't put a number on. But the amount of hugs I got today.
It's like what percentage of the grade 12 students are taking History 12 or Physics 12 or whatever. That's part of the Fraser Institute's ranking schedule. But what it doesn't take into account is that you could have a small school that offers very few courses to students where you're going to get a high percentage taking History 12 because there's no other courses to take. Another school that offers a very comprehensive program, whether it's in visual arts, whether it's in mechanics, you know, a whole range of activities, well, there's no measure that the Fraser Institute has for that. So rather than recognizing the value of the program of the school that has this comprehensive offering, that school, in fact, is somewhat penalized because fewer proportions of students are taking those examinable courses.
Academic areas are those in which there are data available. And in many cases, there are very, very few data that have to do with achievement in fine arts or physical education or other things. We're looking for data that is objective. And by that we mean assessments are marked by people who not only do not know the name of the student who wrote the test, but they also do not even know which school it came from. We look at objective information provided in most cases by ministries of education that reflects student achievement at the school level.
Objective, Well, when we learned about documentary filmmaking, we learned there's really no such thing as objectivity.
Behind the eye, there must be a brain, your brain, making the selection, choosing the perspective that serves your goals.
Anytime you present a selection of information, you're being subjective by placing emphasis on that moment, on that piece of information. Let's watch two scenes that we cut from the same footage.
Student council president, football star, John's just too busy for homework. But if he fails another test, he'll have to repeat the year. Big man on campus indeed. Maybe his friend Mary can help. He's got to pull up his socks, and fast. Can you believe it?
Student council president, football star, John's just too busy for homework. But if he fails another test, he'll have to repeat the year. Big man on campus indeed. Maybe his friend Mary can help. He's got to pull up his socks, and fast.
Can you believe it?
We're doing it now, of course, being subjective, choosing our clips. But if we didn't, you wouldn't have much of a story to watch now, would you?
If there are other ways, and there are other ways to tell the story of what's going on at a school, then I would be perfectly happy for other people to tell that story. As I've said to every one of the stakeholder groups in this province, if you don't like our report card, build your own.
And we haven't done that job, and I think we're remiss in that. Like, I think that's way overdue in terms of us answering that question for ourselves, not just for the Fraser Institute. It would take some work because it would be comprehensive, it would be complicated, but I think it's quite doable.
We don't do that very well in schools. We don't create the spaces for people to give an account and to have their account challenged. The bureaucratization of schools is well on its way. I mean, one of the most damaging effects of that bureaucracy is the limiting of the conversation between parents and teachers. That should be an ongoing conversation all the way through their schooling. It should be not limited to 10 minutes 3 times a year in parent-teacher interviews.
I think any time that you create a learning framework where students are having to display their knowledge in a public way, that becomes an authentic kind of an assessment.
Sometimes they're doing documentary at school here, and they really put themselves in there, and they were able to tell their story. And I mean, how powerful is this? You know, how often, how many people have a chance to tell their story, put it on the screen, and have their peers to see it? Suddenly, they're being told that I can say what I can say everything I think. Oh yeah, you can. So this is what I want them to know. It's more like a tool of expression.
So ultimately, whose story is this educational story? Peter Cowley's in the Fraser Institute in the Vancouver Province and CanWest Global, the union, the teachers union, the school board, the school trustees, the teachers. No, it's the story ultimately we want. It's everyone's story. We want to boil it down to what's working for students and listen to what students say about what's working for them. Really, whose story is this?
Well, it's a democracy, so it's everybody's story, right?
The brilliance of democracy is, unlike a dictatorship, unlike a meritocracy, we have access to the intelligence of all 32 million, whatever that intelligence may be, however varied it may be. We have access to it all.
We're living in, we are not dividends. Grading is a way to divide entire citizens, trained to consume and fit into a neverland. I'm tired of the mass-produced rules and programs.
But a meritocracy actually stratifies itself and eliminates more and more the ability to go fishing in the great pool of those tens of millions of people.
Graduates of adequately supported schools earn their way more profitably in the economy of the community. Now the tax investment returns to the taxpayer.
The whole purpose of education is to prepare people for their role in the community. We separate them and put them in these buildings that we call schools. So the challenge is, how do we help them be part of that community right from the beginning, rather than put them in this place for 12 years and then put them in the community. It's how bizarre the whole schooling operation has become.
There are certain conditions under which a school could grant Community Learning 11 as a locally developed course. Now, whether it's, say, in the area of community work, there is a provision where a student can be granted a course credit, provided it meets certain conditions. So if this course credit happened to be Community Learning 11, then there's an example where, in fact, what that student is doing, in fact, can receive formal credit for it.
Fine arts, citizenship skills, physical education, respect for others, responsibility, academics, you name it, it can be measured, and should be. Let's say, for instance, you want to measure, as a good example, the extent to which schools develop good citizenship skills among their kids.
Absolutely, this country always needs good citizens.
Yes, good citizens.
Some might say, well, it's really hard to measure. Well, things that are hard aren't always impossible.
That's right.
So I'll propose a measure. Each school should be in touch with their graduates 2 years after graduation and ask just 2 questions of their graduates. 1, are you incarcerated? 2, did you vote in the last election for which you were eligible to vote? Done. Some people will say, that's a really bad measure. And I'll say, give me a better one. Let's use the old brain power. Let's get together and find out. Because otherwise, what's the option? What's the option of not having objective measures of success? Well, we do a great job. The Minister of Education, maybe a couple back, said in public, and ministers of education say this all the time, you can send your child to any school in the public system in this province because they're all excellent. Well, what's your basis for saying that, Mr. or Ms. Minister? I see them. I've been in them. They're all excellent. It's bull feathers.
So this isn't a one-way conversation. This isn't about, is it wrong and dangerous and damaging to assess the achievement of young people or children. It's really about how do we assess it, assess their performance, such that as educators, we do a better job for them. And as students, they get an accurate picture of how they're doing. And that's a much more complex assessment endeavor than is simply standardized tests at specific moments in time.
When you use the word standards, it presumes that you've got an end that you've determined, and now you're going to measure people about how well they've attained that end. The problem is that we can't determine an end in education. There is no singular end.
No end? Well, we better find one, because I gotta go to work. I'm sales manager at a bakery, finding my path to success. My story is just beginning. But how can we end this one? We could ask people what makes an educated person.
That's the wrong question, because no one has ever finished educating themselves. They're always in the process of educating themselves.
Okay, educating person.
Someone who knows how to survive.
Also an attitude towards life, somebody who integrates the knowledge and their curiosity and their zest for life.
Basically someone that can pass on what they know.
Someone who tries to keep abreast of the times. You keep well informed in a whole range of areas.
Who isn't afraid of sharing their opinions.
Who can take learning into their own hands as a fully engaged, awake, aware, three-dimensional person.
Criticize, but also take yourself and put yourself in different positions and criticize yourself.
Who thinks for themselves. You can have a discussion with them and it's so stimulating.
Has enough knowledge and experience to kind of play a role in society. So it's not just knowing a lot of things and sitting at home and thinking about them. It's more using them to get involved in the community or in society in some way.
No, look. Don't get hung up in that. What's the point of saying, well, what do you think is an educated person? I think, I'll tell you mine. I think an educated person is somebody who has the skills and the knowledge to be continuously curious about everything that this world has. Do you know how Velcro came about? It's a fantastic story. That French guy who started the company was running through the fields with his dog one day, and for the last time he said, jeepers creepers, all these little birds have gotten to my dog, and they're hard to get off. A bell went off, and he said, wow, I wonder if we could duplicate that natural phenomenon. And Velcro was what happened. Isn't that incredible?
It is.
Yeah, now.
Do you think that kind of creative thinking can be evaluated on a standardized test?
No.
As soon as you institutionalize it, then you have to narrow it and make it into some kind of an end.
Adapt, not discriminate, know the whole, not the half of the mathematics is static and systematic, a holistic.
You decide. Which one will it be?
A for apple, no, not achievement. B is beyond what we are perceiving. C in control is not meant for teaching. Stand for your rights and what you believe in. Education needs communication. Education hurts.
Education hurts.
Society.